everyone, and welcome to Only in San Jose, a podcast about demystifying and democratizing the process of civic participation only in San Jose. My name is Alina Yin, and I will be your host. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 2024 Election Series special. For this episode, we are covering the process of recounts. So for those of you who haven't heard, Santa Clara County became the poster child for Every Vote Counts. This past primary, held on March 5th, resulted in a rare two-way tie for second place in the race for the Congressional District 16. Ex-San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo is the front-runner in the race, coming in with the most votes, and tied for second is current Santa Clara County Supervisor Joe Simitian and Assemblymember Evan Lowe, which would have sent all three to the November general election. But as dramatic as this three-way is, of course it doesn't end there. An official recount has been requested. So what next? So there are four different types of recounts. Number one, California's required automatic manual tally. Number two, County of Santa Clara's automatic recount policy. Number three, a voter requested recount. And number four, a court-ordered recount. In this instance, we are dealing with number three, a voter requested recount. One of the most important processes during this process in California's required automatic manual tally of the votes cast in 1% of the district in the county, with additional precincts counted if necessary to include all the contests in the election. So in the County of Santa Clara, the Registrar of Voters must also adhere to the county's automatic recount policy, in addition to the state's mandated 1% automatic count. So let's break it down. So for California's automatic manual tally, California Elections Code requires that prior to certifying the elections, a random sample of ballots from every election must be recounted manually to verify the computer count. The manual tally must include, at minimum, votes cast in 1% of the precincts. Additional precincts are counted in order to manually verify each contest on the ballot. This manual recount must be completed before the election is certified, and the automatic manual recount is open to the public. Now let's talk about the County of Santa Clara's automatic recount policy. So pursuant to the Board of Supervisors Policy 3.63, for those of you who would like to look that up, it's in our show notes and it's going to be on page 141. So the County of Santa Clara performs an automatic recount for contests with a margin of victory less than 0.25% of the ballots cast, or where that margin is less than 25 total votes. The automatic recount applies only to local contests whose jurisdictions are wholly contained within the County of Santa Clara. Federal and state contests are excluded. The recount will be performed manually except in the case of countywide or the City of San Jose's citywide contests, in which case the recount will be conducted by tabulation machine, and the recount must be conducted prior, again, to the certification of election results. The recount will be conducted concurrently with the 1% manual tally. As an extension of that tally, contests qualifying for the recount will be based on the most recent results reported prior to commencement of the 1% manual tally and following the completed tally of all outstanding vote-by-mail, provisional, and conditional voter ballots. Ballots will be pooled and prepared for automatic recount concurrent with and in the same manner as the regular 1% manual tally. So contested elections via court proceedings. So California Elections Code Division 16 refers to the right for any voter or candidate to contest the election results in court, but this has to be very serious grounds. That certain conduct had occurred that has affected the outcome of the election. The petition and grounds follow the same process as previously explained under a court order recount. Some of you might remember this process with the the 2020 elections in the presidential realm. But anyways, so in addition, at a primary election, a candidate may contest the right of another candidate to nomination to that same office by filing an affidavit alleging any of the following. So the nominated defendant is not eligible to the office in dispute, or there were enough votes cast that were illegal or fraudulent, forged, or otherwise improper, and that had those votes not been counted, the defendant would not have received as many votes as the contestant. And another one, there were enough eligible voters who were denied their right to vote that had those voters been permitted to vote, the defendant would have not received as many votes as the contestant. Or, lastly, due to a mistake, error, or misconduct, the votes in any precinct were so incorrectly counted that it changed the results. Okay, now we have a recount ordered by the Superior Court. For details on court order recounts, you can see Division 16, Chapter 9, Article 4 of the California Elections Code. And all of this will also be in our show notes, so you can go on down there and peruse at your leisure. Okay, so in a single county, the Board of Supervisors or the grand jury may request the county's district attorney to petition the Superior Court to order a public recount of ballots that were tabulated by a voting system in any of the precincts chosen to be recounted. The request and petition can only be made on very specific grounds, and the court-ordered issue with a finding that there is probable cause to believe that the election was affected. These grounds must relate to the safekeeping, handling, tallying, counting, recording, or certification of the ballots or votes cast and based on misconduct, errors or failures by the workers or the vote counting system. The petition must also state that due to the grounds, the outcome of the election would have been different. Also relevant to the grounds for misconduct are the following: that the precinct board or any member thereof was guilty of malconduct. 2, that the person who had been declared to an office was not, at the time of the election, actually eligible to that office. 3, that the person listed as the defendant has committed any other offense against the election, such as offered a bribe or reward to a voter or precinct board member to commit a crime. 4, that illegal votes were casted. 5, that eligible voters who attempted to vote in accordance with the law of the state were denied their right to vote. What number are we on? We are number 6, that the precinct board in conducting the election or in canvassing the returns made error sufficient to change the results of the election as to any person who has been declared elected. And lastly, that there was an error in the vote counting programs or the summations of the ballots. Okay. And finally, now we arrive at a voter requested recount. So, under California's election law, following completion of the official canvass, any voter may file a written request for a recount of the votes cast for any candidate for any office, for slates of the presidential electors, or against any measure. In the office, slate, or measure is voted on statewide. The request is filed with the Secretary of State. Okay. Now let's talk about deadlines for requesting a recount. The timing of a voter requested recount is very short. It must be filed within 5 calendar days after the completion of the official canvass and the signing of the certificate of the election results. It is important to know when the registrar voter completes this canvass and signs the certificate so that this short window is not missed. By law, an election must be certified no later than 30 days after Election Day. So who can request a recount? Any registered voter of the state of California may file a request. This person does not need to be a resident of the district in which the recount is requested. Interesting, huh? And let's see. Now, what does a recount request look like? So, to file a recount request, the request must be written in writing, must specify the contest to be recounted. So in this case, it's Congressional District 16. It must state on behalf of which candidate or slate of electors or position on a measure, affirmative or negative, it is filing. In the request, in this specific request, it listed on behalf of Evan Lowe. However, Assemblymember Evan Lowe has confirmed that he did not actually request the recount. So those are the musts. But the requester may also add to their official filing. They can specify the order in which precincts shall be counted, or they can also request specify the method of counting to be used, computer or manual, and they may specify any other relevant material to be examined. So the written request for the recount must be submitted or filed with the county elections official who is responsible for conducting the election if the contest is not voted upon statewide. If the election is conducted in more than one county, and it is, in this case, it is Santa Clara County and San Mateo County, the request may be filed with the county elections official and the recount conducted within any of the affected counties, or with the Secretary of State if the contest is statewide. So once that is done, the Registrar of Voters must notify the public of the recount. California Election Code requires that the Registrar of Voters to post a notice of the recount, including the date, location, and it has to be at least 1 day prior to the recount. The following person will be notified in person or by any federally regulated overnight mail service. So all candidates for any office that the votes are to be recounted, they have to also notify authorized representatives of presidential candidates if the votes to be recounted were for a presidential election. Proponents of any initiative or referendum or persons filing ballot arguments for or against any initiative, referendum, or measure placed on the ballot, if this was a contest against a measure or a prop. And they have to notify the Secretary of State in the case of a recount of votes cast for candidates for any state office, presidential electors, Congress, U.S. Senate, or delegates to a national convention or any state measure. Okay, now let's talk associated fees with the recount when it's requested by a voter. So a daily deposit is required, and the California Election Code, which generally states that the election officials determine a daily deposit necessary to cover the cost of the recount for each day the recount is conducted. Right now, that number is $12,000 a day for Santa Clara County. But before the recount commences and at the beginning of each day of the recount, the voter filing the request must deposit a fee to cover the cost of the recount for that day. If the requester fails to deposit the fee, the recount may be concluded. Now, if the outcome of the recount has changed the election results in the requester's favor, the deposit is returned. For example, if the person requesting was in third place, so they did not make it to the runoff, and they requested a recount, and it changes, and it now moves the third place into the top two, so that changes who's going to the ballot in November, so a refund is issued. But since both Simitian and Lowe are already going to the November election, and the recount would only result in removing a person, not adding a person, this time around, regardless of how it changes, that $12,000 a day fee will not be returned. So now what does the daily recount process look like? So the recount is open to the public, and it should start no later than 7 calendar days following the receipt of the request and shall continue daily except for weekends and holidays for not less than 6 hours a day until it's completed. Typically, the County of Santa Clara conducts recounts for 8 hours a day and excludes the weekends and county holidays. Okay, nearing the end now. So other requirements for a recount include a manual recount must be conducted by recount boards and under the supervision of election officials. Recount boards consist of 4 voters of the county appointed by the elections officials. The election official determines the number of recount boards necessary to complete the recount in a timely manner. And the election official also determines whether additional personnel are necessary to produce relevant material, sort or retrieve materials, or check signatures. Lastly, if the recount actually results in a change of who wins, the results of the official canvass will be changed and the election results would then be recertified and made public. If the outcome of the election has not changed, for example, it's still a tie, then the results would not be recertified even if the vote totals and margins of victory changed. Woo! What a process, and it's happening right now. This is very rare. It's kind of exciting to follow, and that's also why we decided to do a special episode on recounts. And that's it for now. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider making a small donation to support us. You can go to www.onlyinsj.org to make a small donation or become a Patreon member. We are a listener-supported podcast and producing this content for free because we do believe in the power of democratizing the civic participation process only strengthens our democracy. Thank you so much, and until next time.